Hello, beautiful. How are you? And how are you taking care of yourself today? I hope that today is bringing you much joy and light. And let's get started. Are you ready to find what joyfully ever after looks like for you? Then you are in the right place. I am Heidi Esther, a professional speaker, storyteller, and joy coach. I empower women who take care of the world to break out of those self defeating emotional and thought loops that we get caught in, just like swimming around and around that goldfish little bowl, to lead themselves to their own joy. Because let's be honest, some of us has tools. And we all have the answers inside that we need to find. So we have different friends and helpers along the way. So I am creating these joyfully ever after play shops with one purpose: to give you love and support to lead yourself to more joy. Sometimes I have tools and stories and playful exercises to help you identify those thought loops and build those fantastic patterns of self-leadership to create beautiful joy in your life. Why joyfully ever after? Why not like happily ever after? I believe we helpers who take care of the world have a God-given right to be at the table as equals, to fill ourselves up, to cultivate our own joyful purposes. Even if it's all about other people, right? We are also allowed to help other people and feel good and feel full, because that's how we were made, to feel joy. And if we all helpers filled ourselves up and led relaxed and joyful lives of our own design, instead of feeling like we had to do something or we had a lot of regret and guilt and worry, so much worry, what if none of that ruled over us, right? What would the world look like if we were all just freely living our joyful lives? Would we be able to save ourselves every day like superheroes and then one by one save the world? I think so. Yep. All right. Welcome. Welcome to another Joyfully Ever After Grow Your Joyful Life Foundational Playshop. Today, we are talking about a topic that is so near and dear to my heart: codependency. Yepper. It's a real thing. And if you are live, or whether you're live or watching the replay, please put your questions in the chat. You can always email me, howdy@heidiester.com, with any questions you had about what we are talking about today. Yes. So first, how are you taking care of yourself today? I am taking care of myself. I did 2 meditations this morning. I woke up, I was pretty tired. Our schedule around here, thankfully, it is starting to kind of even out, but it has been a changing schedule for the last 4 months. And it wasn't like just hold on your breath. This is going to be a different schedule for a couple weeks or a month. 4 months. So my bedtimes have been erratic. My wake up times have been erratic. And so my self-care routine has been non-existent. But today I felt just like a heaviness in my limbs. And so I let myself have 2 meditations, and I felt good enough to be able to show up here and talk about something I think is very important. So I took care of myself. Would love to know how you are taking care of yourself today. Your divine, beautiful spirit. How are you honoring yourself today? That's also another good way to look at it. So yes, please send me your questions and about codependency, and or if you don't know it's about codependency, it's just something that really, really annoys you and you're curious about it. So today I'm going to go through a story kind of about what is codependence, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some tools for recognizing and working with it. So the first story is one of my most popular stories on my blog. I don't think it ever made it on my podcast, so I wanted to share it with you. It's called 10 Things I Hate About Her Dog. All right. Are you ready for this? Okay. Meet the satellite. Doesn't it ever bother you that Elvis is always following you around? No, I think he's kind of cute. That's my girlfriend talking. But don't you ever want a break from him? Why would I ever need a break from this handsome man? I stared over to a long nose attached to a tiny black head. Brown black eyes stared back at me intensely. I couldn't see any other part of Elvis. He was hidden behind Stacy's knee. Elvis is an Italian greyhound, like a miniature greyhound, with a cheetah-sized chest and tweaky legs. I put him more in the interesting column than the handsome column, honestly. Elvis and my girlfriend Stacy moved in with me and my little humans about a month ago. I feel like Stacy and I are a yin to each other's yang, like a peanut butter to jelly. You get what I mean. But on the other hand, Elvis is like a mosquito bite I can't reach. But he's clingy, like a satellite around you, always orbiting. Stacy reaches down to pet Elvis, but he runs away because he's, well, Elvis. Yep, he's my buddy. You dog people are crazy. I stick my tongue out at her. Well, you human people talk too much, sticking her tongue out back at me. Well, at least I don't have a litter box to scoop the kids. Yep, that's right. Elvis is litter box trained, like a cat. He uses the bathroom after he is home from a walk. Ugh, Stacy says that makes him a gentleman. I say that makes him a cat dog. He also follows the sun and sleeps on top of furniture. So I'll let you be the judge of that. But getting back to the litter box, to be honest, there was a litter box incident with one of my kids not a year later. Nothing makes your eyes water like a stinky scoop of karma, tell you what. But that's just the tip of the iceberg with my fist clenching issues with Elvis. 15 years prior to that, I sat on the floor in my husband and I's Austin, Texas apartment. Oversized couch, curio cabinet full of porcelain engagement gifts, and wall-to-wall carpeting. Recently, I'd quit my job, moved out of my folks' house, and welcomed my engagement life 1,000 miles south in Texas. Other than the hot wind, it was lovely there. Just my fiance and I. Usually after work, well, he and I both work at the same place. He and I go to the grocery store, work out, eat dinner, and watch TV together. But this week was different. He had left to test some pavement, civil engineering, in West Texas. So this was my new schedule. Race home from work to call him. Eat dinner. Sit down with my fabric shaver and a stack of crocheted blankets. If I'm lucky, there's a football game on. Or I just watch ESPN because it's not like I like it, but it reminds me of my fiance. I call my fiance before bed while looking at our engagement pictures, and I sleep cuddled with his t-shirts. Okay, back to the dog scenario. Elvis has like so many issues. Here are my top 10. He whines if Stacy leaves the house. He whines all night because I put up a gate between the downstairs and the upstairs because I don't want him sleeping in bed with me. Stacy has to put her shirts in his bed so he will calm down. He won't let anybody else pet him. He pushes me away when I get too close to Stacy. I know, like literally he'll jump in between us on the couch. Seriously. When Stacy's gone, he gets so worked up he vomits. And I, unfortunately, am the cleanup crew. He poops outside his litter box. I swear he knows when it's my turn to scoop the litter box. And he sits in between me and Stacy on the couch. He won't let anybody else take him for a walk. Like, what's the deal with that? And last week, he jumped on the kitchen table and left a Sharpie-sized turd on my placemat that I almost picked up in the morning to use because I thought it was an actual Sharpie. Seriously. Why can't Elvis just get a life and do more doggy things, like chew bones or something, or lay down without his mom? So, that is my story. Yes, the ultimate irony. Life brings us people and animals so we can see more of ourselves. What is codependence? So codependence showed up in me as a Velcro wife, Velcro fiance, kind of a Velcro perfectionistic mommy, always leaning on the other and I don't know, just not feeling stable as myself when I talked about in my story when I was living in that apartment in Austin, Texas. I was completely focused on all the things I had to do to make it perfect so that my partner or my fiance and I could spend more time together when he was around, which was like all the time. And I felt safe and anchored with people around. And I carried around a bag full of thank you notes, and I had thank you notes at my bedside table also. So, yes, please know that send me any other questions you had on codependence for sure. Thank you said there is a viewer that said my mother infected me with it. So, all right. Yes. So, what is codependent? Is it contagious? I don't think it's contagious. Well, it's not contagious like a virus, but it is a pattern of behavior that we learn at very young age on how to survive our family system or our school system or our faith system, and it gets us in places where we get positive feedback. So we learn to look for and rely on and lean on positive feedback from others. And maybe not even positive feedback, maybe just feedback. So when I was in high school, here's a good thing. So when I was in high school, I was a very academic overachiever. And I would stay up till God knows when studying. And I don't even know if I ever asked myself, like, do I like this content? Or I didn't, that wasn't even the question. The question was how, how can I beat my brothers? And why was that my goal? Why was that my goal to beat my brothers? So that I could get more approval from my parents. Yes. And so even after, say, it was like midnight after I'd been done studying, I would stay up for another hour and clean the house. And sometimes even in high school, I would clean up after my older brother. And like, what sibling does that? A codependent one, right? One looking for approval. So codependence is a pattern of behaviors that we learn that helps keep us safe and helps us survive in our childhood, in a set or somewhat dysfunctional family system. It keeps us safe, and it keeps us, um, yeah, keeps us safe and, getting our needs met. However, when we're older and we use the same pattern of behavior, like I used to, when I would see friends, I would need to see them all the time for reassurance that, like, I was a good friend. And I would give gifts a lot to people. And why would I give gifts a lot of people? My love language actually is touch, so I'm, like, all about the hugs, which is nice because hugs are free. Um, but yeah, so I would crave those thank you notes. And and if I was unsure of myself and if I felt crappy about myself, I would read the thank you notes. So when we get older, we rely on all of this external input to hold us up. And the problem with that is when we don't get it, we feel like we're a bag in a hurricane. We just get whipped everywhere. We don't know where our next, the calming force is going to come from. We don't know when we're going to get rest next. None of that is in our hands because we are not relying on ourselves for anything. We are letting everyone else plot our own course. We are in a boat and, like, just waiting for other people to hop on board maybe someday and row us somewhere or hand us some food. And you know what happens? We get sunburned and we starve to death. And we end up just listless in the ocean, right? When we start to recognize these patterns of behavior, that's when the power starts to come back. That's when we start to see what it is. So, um, the real goal is codependence is not something that can be cured. It is something that you can learn to manage through self-awareness patterns and self-awareness practice and be able to have healthy and loving relationships in your life and establish healthy boundaries and all of those good things. So there are many different buckets of um, of codependent behaviors. And I have some patterns probably in most of the buckets. And I just kind of want to go through them. Just let you know, these patterns, these categories. I am a codependent in recovery from a 12-step program called CODA. And it's like a real 12-step program. And the beauty is it's a safe space to share, and there's never any crosstalk. Nobody's ever given you advice. Everyone just listens and be able to kind of see pieces of their own story while you share yours, and kind of, as we try to unravel our own stories. And so I want to go through the 5 different buckets of codependence, and then in the show notes I'll put a link to just the the different patterns of behavior even more specifically, so that you can see. I think, honestly, I think everyone has some level of codependence in them, where it's really hard to meet someone who's, we're just brought up to rely, and we all want to do good and we want to help. And it's really hard when we're helpers and we want to contribute to the world to not get entangled into that web of, like, leaning a little bit on what other people think of us, and wanting to get that approval and praise. Um, so so there are denial patterns, um, like we have a hard time. I used to not know what I was feeling. I believed I was a human doing and not, I was not a human feeling until I moved into Coda. And so just kind of denying reality, like, oh, that's not happening. Or um I used to be kind of, what is that word, passive aggressive, and indirect, more like indirect, and so never able to firmly speak my truth, because I was afraid of just getting it out there. So I would just make little snarky comments or something, to kind of like mask my insecurities, about trying to speak up for myself or say something that was helpful. Low self-esteem patterns. So there's lots of, so because we always, codependents tend to rely more on other people for their self-esteem, they don't curate that inside. And so sometimes having low self-esteem and not feeling really good about yourself, um, or trying to looking at the world kind of like in black and white, like either I'm perfect or I suck. That's a low self-esteem pattern, right? Not giving yourself that grace to just be in that gray middle and love yourself in the process, right? We're always in the process. We're always on the journey. We're never at the end, we're never at the beginning, except for, once in our lives for each. So yeah, trying to kind of pass yourself off as like perfect and put that outer mask on, right? But the inside is like a hot mess. So that's kind of where I would have experienced much low self-esteem, and also leaning on others for like feeling safe and feeling anchored and feeling grounded, and not being able to find that in yourself, and through your faith in yourself and your faith in something greater than yourself. um Also, low self-esteem showed up with me, like, I used to call myself a mommy doormat. So I would just kinda give my time away all the time and say, "Whatever you need, yeah, that's great, let's do this," and, just kinda give my time away, but that's also giving my power away, right? That's giving our lives away. Um, so along the lines of a mommy doormat, there's another group of patterns called compliance patterns. And so that's just kind of knowing in your gut or in your heart or in your head, like, this is not a good idea, but still doing it anyway because you don't want to rock the boat. You want everyone to be happy. You don't want to disappoint anybody, right? But then we forget about ourselves. So, codependence, I think, I guess if I had one word to describe it, um, it's many different methods of self forgetting, dismissing, treading on ourselves, and putting other people above us, right? Not on an equal plane. And so in recovery, it's beautiful because then you're like, hey, we're all equal. We're all in the same boat here. I'm gonna do some rowing on my boat, and I'm gonna ask people to help support me and come row on my boat with me. Um, So yeah, so compliant patterns, it's like all those times you wish you could have spoken up, but you didn't because you just wanted to keep the peace or make the meeting go faster, or not rock the boat in your family, or not be the one friend that does not want to go out for karaoke night and just wants to have a drink around a campfire. So compliance. And so codependence, a lot of people say, like, oh, there's so, like, we just give our time away, right? We're always looking out for the other people. But there's like a double-edged sword with codependence that I didn't discover until I'd been quite a few years into my recovery. It's control patterns. So because we are brought up in these systems to need that outside validation, we develop ways to try to control other people to get it, right? To get it faster. Because it's kind of like an addiction. It's like addiction to what people, I view codependence kind of like an addiction to what people, places, and things, like to that outward validation and then that outward feeling good, when it's never gonna feel good, right? Because it's not coming from within first. We have to fill ourselves up first. So yeah, so we develop highly controlling patterns. Like, have you ever been part of, you walk into a room, like it's like a PTA group or some kind of like helper group, and there's this one person, and they are like, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this, like completely and utterly, not like, hey, thanks for coming, glad you can help. No, it's just like, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to. So like, they are trying to control everybody and everything so that it goes the way they want to, so that they get that validation from the outside that they created this perfect whatever it is. I call those people like alpha parents, and I've had quite a few experience with them. And yeah, and so like I didn't realize, like, there's this saying that I'll get to when we talk about it. what we can do. So yeah, so a lot of times control patterns can be seen like, oh, people are so nice and so helpful, and they're really, they're really not. They're really, they really feel empty inside, and there's something inside that's just not right, and it's coming out is this like super charismatic and charming way, but they're just trying to get their knees bent, right? Just like in childhood. So they're not woken up yet. These people are not like bad people. They're just people who hurt a lot more and need our empathy and love. And we need our own empathy and love first, right? To be able to give it to other people. Um, the last pattern that I think is, well, it was very applicable for me, is avoidance patterns. Like, oh, if something seems difficult or I have to have this conversation, I'm not going to. So when I used to be uncomfortable, I would start cracking really weird jokes and I would talk a lot, like a whole lot more than I do now. Now I feel like I've been blessed with the gift of being able to be present and listen with what people need. Um, but avoidance patterns, so many like ways that we distract and avoid our situations. Whenever you feel uncomfortable, do you reach for a certain drink? Like I used to reach for Diet Coke. Do you feel when you feel nervous or out of balance, do you feel compelled to do something? I had a coworker who used to run just like 10 miles a day. Um, and and they said if I don't run 10 times a day, I feel like I feel angry. And so, right? So it's kind of like all these distraction patterns that we do, right? All these things that we're addicted to, like that person might have been a little addicted to running because if they addiction, right, is like something, if we don't get it, it alters our mood. And so if I didn't get outward validation, I felt like I belonged under somebody's shoe. And that's how you know it's more of a codependence, it's more of an addiction than it's just like, oh, it's fine, I'll get over it and I'll figure out how to be, a better person. Yeah, and so we avoid people. Sometimes we avoid having those difficult conversations, or we avoid intimacy in relationships. My first marriage, we never really talked about anything difficult. And anything that was hard, I just kind of tried to smooth over. In my book, I talk a lot about feeling like I was spanked. Spanks are like these undergarment things that suck in your guts. And I always kind of felt like I was spanked. So I was just smoothing things over and hiding things and avoiding things. So, but you know what? Avoidance doesn't solve anything. Okay. So that is codependence. So it's pattern of behaviors. There are different kinds of behaviors that center ourselves outside of ourselves. So we're not in control of us. We're just giving our power away through denial patterns, low self-esteem patterns, compliance patterns, control patterns, and avoidance patterns. Yeah, it's a real thing. Okay. All right. So it is not contagious. It is something that a pattern of behaviors that we learn that we can unlearn. Yay! How can we heal from codependence? Codependence is it's like opening a big can of internal worms, right? We have all these different ways in which we're not feeding ourselves and we're not taking care of ourselves because we're looking outside. We're looking for happiness outside of us. Um, some people like to keep busy. Some type of people like to start new projects like all the time and all the time, and never finish them. Um, and so the biggest tool is self-awareness, is starting that internal dialogue with yourself in with compassion and curiosity and courage. I will give you the 3 C's: compassion, curiosity and courage, compassion, so that we are easing up on our internal language of ourselves. Um, because we do that a lot when we don't get external validation, right? Because we're putting our self-esteem in other people's hands, right? So as we pull that back, we need to become compassionate, and we might have learned some internal language growing up or through different jobs. We have maybe learned to suffer some other people giving us that negative language, that very self-defeating language. And so just greeting yourself with a big amount of compassion to kind of just sit with yourself and all the ways that we did not learn, right? We did not learn other patterns of behavior. We learned about how to survive with the tools that made us have codependent patterns. And so awareness is this super key, super key. So we're going to do compassion. It's so important. And then curiosity, right? Curiosity invites you to open the door to oh, I wonder, okay, if this came from my family of origin and maybe I saw my parents act out these kind of scenarios. Okay, so that's where it came from. And I'm going to, right, use my compassion, and I'm going to forgive them because they were just trying their best. And I'm going to forgive myself because I have been trying my best the whole time. Right? So you invite in that curiosity to bring in the compassion. And then you can just start to look at oh, I wonder what I really wanted when I was sure, I'll chair that committee, when you knew you had no time, when you knew you had no bandwidth, and you knew it was going to just eat into your night's sleep, 6 nights a month. So inviting curiosity, I wonder what I was really needing out of that. Were we needing external validation and approval? Did we need to get another, was that a class? Did we need to get another certificate so that we feel like we're still smart and we're still learning and we're still valid? So once we pull back that curtain with curiosity and see what is going on there, then we can say, oh, okay, so that was what was going on there. I just really was trying to feel like the smartest person in my family by getting these certificates, and all of my other siblings are overachievers. And so I just wanted to do the same thing. Or everyone at work is, on these paths to get this professional certification. So I wanted to. But do I really want to? No, right? Or I guess sometimes. When I was in fundraising, it seemed like everyone and their mother was getting this certificate called a CFRE. So it's like a certified fundraising executive. And I would feel so bad. Why don't I get this? Why don't I want to get this? I mean, I was always busy, right? Always working, kids, full-time job, doing all the things. And so I actually ended up not getting that certificate. But it wasn't without a lot of emotional pain inside and guilt, and feeling much lesser than all of my fundraising colleagues, because I had a lot of codependence patterns, and I wanted that external validation of being a legit fundraiser, and I thought I needed that with a certificate. So anyway, yeah. So inviting in that compassion, and then that curiosity, and then taking this journey is not easy. Stepping into my first 12-step room was one of the scariest moments of my life. And I didn't speak for the first few weeks. And finally, when I did, I was like, this is where it happens. And I honored myself as a verbal processor, right? To be in those safe rooms and being able to hear other people's story and hear my journey and my pain through other people's stories, and develop that self-awareness. So courage is a big part. And I would say just being on, I'm almost 10 years in recovery from when I first started to recognize my codependent patterns. It's a journey, and um, remember to stop and be proud of yourself. I think a lot of the codependent patterns, because we give so much of we look for that external validation in people, places, and things. We do not curate being proud of ourselves, celebrating ourselves, the big stuff and the little stuff. And that is something that I've learned in the past couple of years. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to be proud of myself. And so that is like an ongoing thing with me. So I will consciously take a break after I have a little win and do a little celebration. I'll do a little celebration dance, or I'll like text a friend, and I will mention it to my family and not keep it hidden inside, and like ask for a group hug because I love hugs. Um, so um, yeah, so developing that self-awareness, and through inviting in courage, compassion, and curiosity. So just writing down thoughts at the end of every day. I initially started my journey by writing down things I was grateful for, to curate something inside, right? Something that came from inside and not outside. So, and I will put different resources about the 12 steps of CODA in the show notes. But um, I guess at some point I'll talk a little bit more about my codependence journey. And if you want to know more about my first steps of awareness into what that is, I recommend you check out my book, For Crying Out Loud. And I will put a link in the show notes. And that talks a lot about the initial things I had to break through to be able uh, to um, to speak up for myself, and to figure out, to say, yeah, I'm worthy of feeling good from the inside and not from the outside. All right. I hope you enjoyed the play shop. And right now, for wrap up, we are going to do the snowman of affirmation. My little glass snowman full of sun colored notes. And I'm going to pick one for you in honor of this chat we had today. Oh, here we go. I feel like this is very appropriate. The affirmation for you is, I choose myself and my curiosities over fear. There you go. I choose myself and my curiosities, and being courageous, right, over fear. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little bit about codependency and what it is. And I would love to hear your questions. Just pop them down in the chat, or feel free to email me at howdy@HeidiEsther.com. Sending you love, light, and laughter. Until next time, I'm Heidi Esther.